There comes a moment, quiet, unremarkable, when you realize it has been 10 days since your child called. Not because anything happened, not because there was a fight or a misunderstanding or a silence born of anger. Just 10 days. And you hadn't noticed until just now, standing at the kitchen window with your coffee going cold in your hand, watching the neighbor's cat cross the yard in the early morning. 10 days. You pick up your phone. You set it down again. You think they are busy. They have their life. This is how it should be. And both of those things are true. And still, somewhere under the ribs, something shifts. Something you don't quite have the right word for. Not grief, exactly. Not loneliness in the ordinary sense. Something quieter than both of those. Something that belongs to this particular stage of life and to very few others. The slow loosening of the knot. It doesn't happen all at once. That's the thing people don't tell you. When children are small, they fill the house with a kind of noise that you sometimes think you cannot bear. Shoes left in doorways, questions that never stop. A presence so total that you can barely complete a thought without interruption. And then, slowly, so slowly, you almost don't see it. The house begins to breathe differently. First, they go to school, then to friends' houses, then to other cities for university, for work, for love. Each leaving is natural. Each one is right. You encouraged it because you wanted that for them. Independence, a full life, the courage to go far. You just didn't know back then what far would feel like from this end of the distance. The calls in those early years of their independence are frequent. They need things, practical things, advice about landlords and bank accounts, and what to do when you have a fever and you're alone. And you give those things gladly. You are useful. You are connected through necessity, which is not the deepest connection, but it is warm, and you take it. Then they find their footing. They learn how to manage the landlord. They build friendships. They find a partner or don't, but find a life regardless. They grow into themselves in ways you can barely see from where you stand. Only glimpsing pieces of the person they are becoming in the photographs they post online, in the brief calls on Sunday evenings, in the stories they tell you, already edited, already passed, already resolved before you even hear about them. The calls begin to shorten, not dramatically, never dramatically, just a little shorter, a little less often. The pauses where they used to say, "Tell me about your week," are now filled by a glance at the time, a mention of something they need to do, and then the soft sound of goodbye. You don't say anything. What would you say? You love them. This is what love looks like over time. It changes shape. It has to. There is a particular silence that lives in houses where children once were. It is different from ordinary silence. It has a texture, a warmth that has cooled but hasn't gone entirely cold. You can feel it in the room that was once theirs, now a guest room or a study, still holding some arrangement of furniture that you never quite had the heart to change completely. You pass the door sometimes and don't look in. A woman named Britta. She lives in a town near a lake in Sweden. Retired now, her husband traveling for work most weeks. She told herself for a long time that she preferred the quiet. After 30 years of school lunches and sports schedules and parent meetings and the relentless logistics of raising 2 children, the quiet felt like a reward she had earned. And it was for a while. But quiet that you chose and quiet that has simply settled around you. These are 2 different things. She noticed it first on a Thursday in November. Her daughter had called the Sunday before. A short conversation, cheerful enough, ending with, "I'll call you next week, Mama." Next week had become the following week, and now it was Thursday, and she was sitting at the table after dinner with a book she hadn't managed to open, and she understood that she had been waiting. Not waiting with worry, just waiting. The way you wait for weather to change. A low-level attentiveness, a small, persistent hope that has nowhere to go. She didn't call her daughter. She opened the book. She read 3 pages and realized she had absorbed none of it. She made tea. She sat by the window. Outside, the first snow of the year was beginning to fall. She watched it for a long time, and she thought, "My daughter doesn't know it's snowing here right now." And somehow that small fact felt more significant than it should have. There is an unspoken agreement between parents and their adult children. It goes something like this. The parent will not mention how seldom the calls come. The child will not feel guilt about it. Both will pretend, when they do speak, that the distance is manageable and the silence between calls is simply life, simply time passing, simply the natural order of things. And it is. It is the natural order of things. But human beings are not very good at living in the natural order of things without feeling the friction of it. We built fires because cold was natural, and we didn't want to simply accept it. We tell each other stories because silence is natural, and sometimes it is too large to sit inside alone. So there is this friction, this quiet, private friction that parents carry around in the years when their children have left and built their own worlds. You don't talk about it much, not because it is shameful, but because it is hard to explain without sounding like a complaint. And you don't want to complain. You don't want to be the kind of parent who makes their child feel guilty for living well. So you say, "I'm fine. Things are quiet here. How are you?" And you listen carefully and you try to memorize the details they give you, because those details are what you will turn over in your mind for the next week. The name of the colleague they mentioned, the restaurant they tried, the small frustration with the apartment heating that they laughed about. These fragments are what you have. You hold them gently. Here is something that doesn't get said often enough. The children feel it too. Not in the same way, not with the same weight. But there is a guilt that moves through the daily life of adult children. A guilt about not calling enough, about the way time moves when you are inside a busy life and the weeks collapse into each other. Your son puts his phone down on a Tuesday evening, meaning to call you, and then his partner comes home and they cook dinner together, and the evening happens the way evenings do. And by the time he remembers, it's too late to call without worrying you. Wednesday passes. Then the weekend, which was full. Then another week begins. He thinks about you. He carries you with him in ways you would probably be surprised to know. But the carrying is interior, and it doesn't always translate into the thing you would most feel. A voice on the phone, a presence in your week. This is one of the sadder mismatches of love across distance. The feeling is there, on both sides, usually, but it lives in different shapes, in different bodies, and those shapes don't always match. Your daughter thinks of you when she makes the soup you taught her, the one with the root vegetables and the bay leaves. She thinks, I should tell Mama I made this. And then the evening moves on and she doesn't. And you never know that she stood in her kitchen in another city and thought of you. These invisible moments of connection, they happen more than you know. They are just invisible. There is something else, too, that sits underneath all of this. When you are older, when you are past 50, past 60, the distance from your children is not just emotional. It becomes physical in a way that quietly unsettles you. You notice you are slower on the stairs. You notice that a cold takes longer to leave your body than it once did. You wake at 3 in the morning sometimes for no particular reason and lie there in the dark listening to the house, thinking about time. And somewhere in those quiet middle-of-the-night thoughts, you think about your children, not with despair, just with a kind of longing that has no object beyond presence. You want them near, not every day. You understand they cannot be near every day, but near enough that you could see the shape of their lives, the actual texture of their days, and not just the curated summaries they offer on Sunday calls. A man named Einar, living in Norway, retired from teaching, widowed 3 years ago, has 2 adult sons who live in Oslo and London. He speaks to them sometimes on video calls, and he is always glad afterward. But he has noticed something. Before he calls, he prepares himself. He thinks about what to say. He thinks about how to be present and engaged and not burdensome. He thinks about how to perform wellness, because he has learned over time that if he sounds tired or low or just quietly lonely, his sons worry. And when they worry, the calls become tinged with something uncomfortable, a kind of careful management of him, and he hates that more than the loneliness. So he is cheerful on the calls. He tells them about the walk he took, the book he is reading, the neighbor who built a new shed. He asks about their lives and listens well. He says goodbye warmly. And then he sits afterward in his chair by the window, looking out at the fjord going gray in the evening light, and he feels something that he cannot quite name. A residue of the performance, a small exhaustion. He loves his sons. They love him. None of this is anyone's fault. That is perhaps the hardest thing, when sadness has no fault attached to it. Closeness, when children are small, is almost entirely physical. You are in the same rooms. You share meals and mornings and the mundane details of each other's days without any effort at all, simply by being in the same house. When that physical closeness ends, something has to replace it. And what replaces it is effort, intention, the choice to reach across the distance and say, I am here. I am thinking of you. Your life matters to me. That choice is harder than it sounds, not because the love is gone, but because daily life has a very powerful gravity, and it pulls you into its own orbit, and the people who live in other orbits slowly move to the periphery of your vision. This is not cruelty. It is just physics. But it means that closeness as you age becomes something you have to tend, like a garden in a climate where nothing grows easily. You have to go out and work at it in the cold. Some families find this easier than others. Some have a culture of frequent contact, messages throughout the day, effortless presence across distance. Others have a culture of longer silences and less frequent but deeper connection. Neither is wrong. They are just different shapes of love. But if your family has drifted into the longer silences, it is worth knowing. The silence can become a habit before anyone intends it to. And habits are hard to see clearly from inside them. There is a particular joy, small and private, when your child calls unexpectedly, not on the usual day, not to report news or solve a problem, just calls because they were thinking of you, because something happened that they wanted to tell you about, because they drove past a place that reminded them of a trip you took together when they were 12. These calls are different from the scheduled ones. They feel like being chosen, like your place in their life is not just a duty they fulfill on certain days, but a genuine presence they return to without obligation. You don't need many of these to carry you through. One is enough for weeks. And perhaps that is something worth saying. The love between parents and adult children is often held in very small containers. A text that says, thinking of you. A photograph sent without comment. A call that lasts only 10 minutes but leaves you feeling seen. We do not need large gestures. We need frequency. We need the small, ordinary sign that we exist in someone's daily life, even distantly, even peripherally, that we have not simply become history. Britta, the woman by the lake, eventually stopped waiting for Sundays. She started calling on Wednesdays instead. Not every Wednesday, just sometimes. A shorter call, lighter, without the weight of the weekly check-in. She would call and say, "I just made that cake you always liked. Do you remember it?" The cardamom one. And her daughter would laugh and say yes, she remembered. And they would talk for 20 minutes about nothing important. And it was better than the Sunday calls had been for some time. Einar began writing letters, real letters on paper, which surprised his sons and surprised himself. Not because he had important things to say. He didn't, mostly. But because a letter requires a different kind of attention than a phone call. You have to sit with your thoughts. You have to choose what matters. And his sons began writing back, and in those letters, they said things they never said on calls. Something about the medium allowed it. These are small adjustments, not solutions. There are no solutions to the passing of time and the growing of distance. But small adjustments can change the quality of a life significantly. And perhaps the most important adjustment is interior. It is the shift from grieving what the relationship used to be, that total immersive closeness of the early years, to finding what it is now, what it can still be. It is not less, it is different. A different kind of closeness, across different kinds of distance, held in different containers. But it is still love. That part hasn't changed. The coffee has gone cold by the window. You pick up your phone. You look at your child's name there among your contacts. So familiar, so permanent feeling. You think about calling. You think about what you would say. Maybe you call. Maybe you don't. Maybe you put the phone in your pocket and go about the morning, carrying them quietly with you the way you always have, the way parents always have in every generation, in every country, in every winter kitchen with cold coffee and a cat crossing someone's yard in the early gray light. They are living their lives. Somewhere out there, they are having a Tuesday. They are probably fine. They are probably busy in the unremarkable ways that a full life is busy. And somewhere inside that busy, ordinary day, perhaps when they are making soup or driving to work or lying awake at 3 in the morning in their own dark bedroom, they are thinking of you too. You may never know exactly when, but it happens. You can trust that it happens. The distance is real. The love is also real. Both of these things can be true at the same time without one canceling the other out. This is what love looks like over a whole life. Not always close, not always loud. Often just this. Two people carrying each other quietly through their separate days, across whatever distance has grown between them, in the only way they know how. That is enough. It is hard, and it is real, and it is enough. If this quiet moment resonated with you, you are always welcome here. This channel was created for slow reflections, honest emotions, and the thoughts many people carry silently through life. If you'd like more stories like this, you can gently subscribe and return whenever you need a peaceful place to think, feel, or simply listen. Thank you for spending this moment here tonight. Take care of yourself. and rest well.